In November 1987, the Dardeen family of Ina, Illinois were viciously murdered by an unknown killer everyone in the area came to fear. The family's badly beaten bodies were discovered in and near their mobile home, and to this day the murders remain unsolved. Keith Dardeen, a 29-year-old treatment plant operator, lived with his wife Elaine and 2-year-old son Peter in Jefferson County, Illinois, just outside of the village of Ina. The family lived in a trailer Keith had bought that sat on land he and his wife rented from a farming couple. In 1987, Elaine became pregnant with the couple's second child. As such, they seriously considered moving to a bigger home, but they wanted to move for another reason as well. According to Joanne Dardeen, Keith's mother, Keith told her that he wanted to move back to his hometown of Mount Carmel, even without securing a job there, as he regretted ever moving to Ina in the first place, which he thought had become too violent. His friend reported that at one point, following the rape and murder of a 10-year-old girl in the area in May 1987, Keith became so protective of his family, he wouldn't even let a young woman into the trailer to make a phone call. Keith's precautions, however, would sadly be all for naught. On November 18, 1987, Keith Dardeen failed to report to work, which was unlike him. His supervisor at the treatment plant didn't receive a phone call letting him know Keith wouldn't be in. Phone calls to the Dardeen residents went unanswered. Keith's boss also phoned each of Keith's parents, who were divorced and living separately in Mount Carmel. Neither of them knew where Keith could be. Don Dardeen, Keith's father, sensed trouble. He phoned the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office and agreed to drive down to Ina and accompany police to Keith and Elaine's home to investigate. Don used his key to the trailer to let the officers inside, and what they found shocked them. Elaine was dead, bound and gagged with duct tape, and horribly beaten. She had been tucked in a bed alongside Peter, who'd also been beaten to death. Elaine had given birth during the attack, her labor induced by the blows of her assailant, and her newborn daughter was killed as well and placed in the bed with her mother and brother. The killer's weapon was apparently a baseball bat found at the scene, which had been a birthday gift to Peter from Keith. Keith was nowhere to be found, and initially authorities believed he might be the culprit, as his car was also missing. They went to his mother's house in Mount Carmel to find answers, but the next day a group of hunters discovered Keith's body in a wheat field not far from the trailer. He had been shot 3 times, and his penis had been removed. His car was found parked outside the police station in Benton, 11 miles from the trailer, its interior spattered with blood. The killer's motive was extremely difficult for investigators to determine. The Dardeens had no enemies. All of the family's valuables remained in place, which ruled out robbery as the motive. The police found a stack of papers with sports scores written on them in the trailer, which made them wonder if Keith had incurred gambling debts, though Joanne said this went against her son's character. The only other clue police found was a small amount of marijuana in the trailer, which they believed didn't belong to the Dardeens but to the killer, who'd inadvertently left it behind. Joanne would later say in 1997 that she thought maybe someone had wanted Keith to sell drugs, and he refused. Then in 2010, while awaiting trial on a murder charge, someone confessed to the crime, 22-year-old serial killer Tommy Lynn Sells. Sells was a drifter who traveled around the country, and he claimed that on a trip through Jefferson County in 1987, he met Keith at either a truck stop or a pool hall. Keith invited him to dinner, and Sells accepted. After the meal, Sells planned to simply move on, but Keith allegedly triggered his anger by sexually propositioning him, offering either a one-on-one or a threesome with Elaine. Sells forced Keith to bind and gag his wife and child. Then he forced him at gunpoint to drive to the field where his body was found, and there killed and castrated him. He then drove back to the trailer to kill Elaine and Peter since they were witnesses to the crime. Afterwards, he cleaned up the scene and drove Keith's car to Benton. But this isn't Sells' only version of the story, which casts doubt on the truthfulness of his confession. Sells claimed on a different occasion that he did not meet Keith at a truck stop or pool hall, and there was no invitation to dinner nor sexual offer made. Instead, Sells went to the trailer and, seeing it was for sale, claimed he was interested in buying it. He then overpowered Keith and committed the murders in the same way as he recounted in his initial confession. This discrepancy, as well as some details of the first account, make it seem Sells was lying about having committed the murders. Why, after all, would Keith invite a stranger to his home for dinner if he was so concerned about his family's well-being? Keith's family and friends also said that it was unlikely Keith would make homosexual advances towards Sells, as they had no indication Keith was interested in men. Furthermore, when questioned, it was found Sells didn't know details of the crime not revealed to the public. It's possible that Sells was confessing to crimes he didn't commit in order to evade the death penalty and take advantage of the judicial system's gratitude. Tommy Lynn Sells was executed in 2014 in Texas, where he'd been found guilty of several murders. It's not known whether this means justice was served to the Dardeens. Joanne Dardeen wanted to believe that the case was solved, but by the time of Sells' execution, she admitted she couldn't accept he was the murderer, saying, "A lot of people think it's done and over with, but to me, it's not." As such, the murders of Elaine and Keith Dardeen and their children remain a perplexing mystery. If you have any information that may help in solving this case, please report it to the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office, and please keep the Dardeens in your thoughts. Thank you guys, stay safe out there, and remember not to get scared out of sorts.